And fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Enoch City, Utah, January 4th, 2023. Enoch City is located in southern Utah between Salt Lake City and Las Vegas. It's one of the fastest growing areas in the United States because that's who the money is being given to. The scene of this mass murder was one of the new subdivisions that are popping up in the area. Its residents are primarily members of the Mormon Church. At around 4 p.m. last Wednesday, police from the Enoch City Police Department responded to a call asking for a welfare check to be performed at the house of Michael and Tasha Haight. The couple had been married for 20 years and had 5 children. Tasha, as well as other members of her family, were seen just the night before at a church group for young women. It was the last time they would be seen alive. The welfare call was specifically in regards to Tasha Haight, who had missed an appointment earlier in the day, which prompted her family to call the police. The police found 8 members of the Haight family dead inside the house. Tasha and Michael were dead along with their 5 children, the youngest of whom was only 4 years old. Also dead at the scene was Gail Earl, Tasha Haight's mother. The police concluded that it was a murder-suicide and the killer was Michael Haight. Michael had been an Allstate insurance agent, but a friend had told a Fox affiliate that he had quit his job within the last week. This story hasn't gotten anywhere near the coverage that you would think. We've heard far more about a child bringing a gun to school in Virginia, an incident in which no one was killed, than we have about this tragedy in which 8 people died. Biden's White House gave their condolences to the family and the people in the area, but that still wasn't enough for the white media to make this front page news. Michael and Tasha Haight were not unknown to the police. The police chief admitted that his department had been involved in investigations with the family a couple years prior, though the police chief refused to give any details as to what that meant. Though court records show that Tasha Haight filed for divorce on December 21st, and Michael had been served with the papers on December 27th, a week before the massacre. And, as with the police, the details of the divorce are also unknown because Utah law keeps those records sealed. According to Tasha's sister-in-law, Michael had removed the guns from the home just before the massacre. The sister-in-law said that both Tasha and Gail had been trained in gun safety and personal protection. She asserted that the guns had been removed beforehand so that the family would have no means of stopping Michael from carrying out his gruesome work. The attorney who represented Tasha Haight in the divorce case said she hadn't expressed any fear that her husband would physically hurt her. Well, it certainly wouldn't be the first time that an attorney was wrong about their client. The family had been active in the church, and many of the other residents were also congregants at the same church. Funeral services are set to be held today. Now, there's an epidemic of these kinds of domestic massacres across America. And the first question usually isn't the one that ought to be asked, which is, where's the outrage? The main reason that it's lacking is that these incidents are treated as one and done, buried by the white media, though they do, after this latest incident, reluctantly report that they've happened every 3.5 weeks for the last 2 decades, according to a database compiled by USA Today. So there's been one of these incidents at least once a month for the last 20 years. And you're just now hearing that factoid. They also give a passing mention to the fact that family mass killings are the most common type of mass killing, making up about 45% of the 415 mass shootings since 2006. They happen twice as often as mass shootings in which members of the public are killed. Now, this is something that doesn't get mentioned at all. There's a whole lot of talk about mass shootings, but I told you there's supposed to be a difference between mass shootings and mass killings. Notice what the white media put here. They didn't say mass shootings, they said killings. Family mass killings are the most common type of mass killing. That's why I told you, don't let them sit there and parse words on you and use trick language. Mass shooting as opposed to mass killing, don't let them do that. Now, the fact that family mass killings are the most common type of mass killings in the United States is something that everybody ought to be familiar with. Everybody ought to know that. But they don't, because the white media doesn't tell them. And the politicians don't want to have to discuss that either. All the talking about guns and gun safety and all of these mass shootings and mass killings, and yet nobody's pointed out that little factoid that I just got through giving to you. And why do you think that is? Politicians dare not mention it. This is something that they don't want to have to discuss. They don't want to bring that up, so they haven't. Now, of course, those of you who subscribe to me know that my Crime Report series documents these slaughters, and it hasn't been just one or two of them. If you get your information from the white media, you wouldn't have heard about this. And it's not just domestic violence. I told you last month about a mass murder that took place in Ohio, the same Ohio where the Pike County Massacre took place. Not only do the authorities in Ohio not think that they have a problem, but the white media doesn't either. But they're so busy with their racial narratives, where they want to focus all the attention on one or two gangbangers being killed in Chicago, that they ignore entire families getting killed in suburbia and the rural areas. If the white media spent less time sensationalizing nothing burgers like the Jussie Smollett fiasco, and spent more time focusing on these crimes where entire families are being massacred, then these tragedies could be stopped or at the very least greatly reduced. So why don't they? The problem is the white media doesn't care. Their job, as they see it, is to control the public mind through lying images and fraudulent narratives. They get a sugar rush out of showing images of black people who have been arrested or accused of a crime, but their decision to racially censor their stories is what allows this bloodshed to go on to this extent. The white media's content is by and large comfort food for the dominant society, and it's having disastrous results. America has a love affair with guns, but that fatal attraction is not highest in the inner city. The big cities have tried to curtail, if not eliminate, access to guns. It's in the rural areas, suburbs, and so-called flyover country where the gun is right up there with God. These slaughters are not most likely to happen where the population is densest. It's most likely to happen where the population is the most privileged. I don't believe in any silver bullets to problems, but I do believe in root causes. And unless and until this country and its media are finally willing to get honest about this American carnage and the real reasons that it keeps happening, then the bloodshed will only continue. The racial narrative that undergirds and justifies the American social order is so important to the white media that even with all these massacres on a monthly basis, they still won't tell the truth. They keep putting on feel-good distractions about Chicago or Los Angeles, the big bad black man on a non-stop 24-hour loop. What they're doing is they're playing the life and death equivalent of, if a tree falls and nobody hears it, then did it really fall? Of course, the answer is yes, it did fall. Just because the white media keeps the public unaware of something doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means that there's a lot of people who are going to continue suffering in silence. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Kenneth Prescia, Wesley Monroe,